All right. We are live. Good Sunday morning. I am going to give it a few minutes, like I always do, for people to join. Happy Sunday to you. It is Sunday, April the 23rd. Good morning, Nadia. Thank you for being here. We'll
Good morning, Jewel. Thank you so
give.
much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm pleased that you're here. This is one of our many chats and phone conversations, and just having it in person. So I'm happy that you're here. All right, we'll give it a few more minutes. Have some folks join. Good morning. I see some thumbs up. Thank you for being here. We are going to give it just a few more minutes and then I'll kick it off because I know we have a lot to talk about and I want to be sure we get to all of it. A special guest there.
Gosh. Uh,
Hi, Gabby. Good morning from California. Thank you for being here. Good morning. Good morning. All right. We are
nice.
going to, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you saying, Naja?
No, I was going to say it's nice and early for Judith.
It is.
In-
I'm always pleased. I have guests from the West Coast. I actually sometimes have international guests who join, and I know it's a interesting time for them. So I'm happy to that they take the time out to join us. Hello, hello, hello. All right, we'll go ahead and get started because we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a great conversation scheduled for this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you are. I'll kick it off. Let me change my slide so you all work with me. You know how I am with the technical stuff. So let me let me figure it out. There we go. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is the Creating Home, a Tiny House series, and this segment is our conversation on intimate spaces. Every Sunday, I offer live content alternating between these conversations and then the What's Your Question segment, where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. To introduce myself, I always say I have built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015, and since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I also offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey, and you can find links to schedule with me in the video description once this goes live. And along the way, I serve up a lot of representation because I want to see us in and around this movement. It's my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And I hope that if you find this information and the video helpful, that you'll like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to the channel, and then also turn on the notifications so you'll know when content is available. So that is my intro. Thank you again, Naja. Thank you for being here. I am going to ask you to introduce yourself to our guests before we get started chatting.
Hello, my name is Nadia Giordani. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I Airbnb a tiny house in my backyard, which was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'm also mom to a 22-year-old college student, Gabby, who's listening right now. And I'm a nutritionist. I have a master's degree in nutrition. I believe in holistic living, not only what we take in, but what we surround ourselves in our environment. It's really important to optimum health. I
Absolutely.
love to travel.
You do love to travel just like me. Absolutely. So I always say that I believe our homes tell a story about us, whether intentional or unintentional. I always feel that with people in and around the tiny house movement, that there is a lot more intent in their decisions to get there, in their design, in their tiny house journey, and that's what we'll explore in this conversation. I feel like it is so much bigger than just the tiny house. And I think you'll agree with that as we talk about all of the things that you do and your intent around the work that you're doing with the tiny house and around in the movement, etc. So I always I have known Naja, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years now. I can't remember,
At least.
but I'm always in her ear because I am one of her biggest cheerleaders because I don't feel like she she talks about the amazing stuff she does quite enough. So that is one of the jobs that I signed up for in addition to Gabby. And so that is a part of why we're having this conversation because the work that she does is so important and I want to be able to share that with others and have her talk about the amazing things that she does. And so we'll start off talking about your tiny house journey, and I'm going to share some pictures because Nadia was also on Tiny House Big Living, the same HGTV show I was on in 2015. You were on 2017, right?
Mhm.
2017. Okay. So we'll share some of the pictures, talk about the house, and then we'll have some conversation around that. And then we'll just kind of move through some of the other segments. So bear with us because the way we'll talk through the pictures is a little different from how I normally do. So just bear with me. We'll get to a good point and it'll make some sense. So let me change my screen here. All right, there we go. So this is the kickoff. Naja, I'll have you talk us through the house and all of those the details of the house. But initially, watching your episode, your tiny house was designed for you to be an empty nester as Gabby went to college, or was that your plan, or was that more of the storyline? I know HGTV took some creative liberty to create storylines, so that now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been a created storyline, or was that your plan? Like, at what point did you decide you were Airbnb, or was that your intent all along?
Okay, so my intent was to build a tiny house to have as my future home when Gabby went to college.
Okay, all
Um,
right.
yeah, but in between that space, because she was only 15 at the time, so in between that space, I was planning to Airbnb it to recoup some of my expenses and then move in after
Got
she
it.
went to college.
Okay. All
Yes.
right. Got it. All right. So of note is Gabby is graduating soon. So it's I'll,
And
I'll
this
just
is not the tiny house.
no, you are not in the tiny house. So let's just talk through this is some pics of the episode. Let's talk through the pics of the episode, talk through your house. I remember watching your episode and I remember that you wanted to have a part in some of the work that was being done.
I did.
Yeah.
So Tom, my builder, gave me a drill and showed me how to drill the boards into the stairs. And after a few minutes, they handed the drill to Gabby because I obviously could not handle it. She did a much better job than I did. And that's her kneeling on the floor, finishing the work that I almost started.
Well, you got fired very quickly, it sounds like,
I
from
did.
your duties. Okay, so I know also from knowing you as well as your episode, there was a lot of importance placed on the use of eco-friendly materials in your build. I often talk about that in my consultations, like the importance of quality materials. And I didn't do as an eco-friendly build as you, but I always talk about like my decisions to not use pink insulation. It's a small space and you don't want the off gassing of pink insulation surrounding you in a small tiny home space, the formaldehyde that's in that pink insulation. um, Talk to us a bit about those decisions and why that was so important to you.
So as I mentioned earlier, health is more than food. It's also our environment. So I did a lot of research after designing the home. I'd started doing a lot of research about insulation and walls and paint and just things that really mattered to me. So, and things that I could control.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't really control windows or
Mm-hmm.
doors,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a life for off gassing. It does eventually subside, but things like paint and insulation, they really off gas for a really long time. So after doing my research, I talked to Tom and I told him, these are the specific materials that I would like to use. So for the painting of the interior, we used all non-VOC varnishes and paints. Also, my floors are hardwood floors, but they're solid pine floors. The
Okay.
insulation is a healthy insulation, and my walls are made of their wood. They are not made with sheetrock.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So,
Also, mhm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you want to talk beyond building, also all my cabinets were custom made. We did not insert already made cabinets into the tiny house. So
Okay.
because those are made out of materials that I felt were unhealthy. As you can see there, all our cabinets are made from pine, and the panels and the walls are made of birch. They're birch wood. Um, yeah, and also, as if you look at the cushions, the pillows, the mattresses in the house, those were also very important to me. So I reached out to a company in California, and the mattresses are made of organic cotton, wool, and soy foam. So they're all covered with organic cotton covering. So I special ordered those, and the cushions on the seats are also soy foam, and even my dishes and my glassware, they're made with non-toxic finishes. So I think my rugs are all cotton, and we wash them regularly. Just little things like that I thought about. The Like I said, the things that I could control and manage. I definitely put a lot of thought into that.
Absolutely. You went to a great level of detail that I think a lot of people may not consider all of the, as you keep saying, the things that you control. A lot of people don't consider those options as things that they can make decisions around and would have long standing impact for them and their health.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I know, and I've had a beautiful opportunity to stay in the tiny house and visit your home as well as stay in the tiny house. So it is a beautiful place to stay. And you all know I love a good screened in porch. And got some inspiration from, I had not built mine yet when the last time I came to visit you. So absolutely got some inspiration. Talk about the process. So you have your home in your backyard in the neighborhood. It's Cabbage Town in Atlanta. And
Yes, ma'am.
I know that you had a bit of challenge with some of the neighbors as you were bringing bringing your home into the neighborhood. Talk a bit about what that was like, and then kind of the process that you went through to I'm gonna change the slide so we can have that conversation. Hang on a second. You all,
My vegetable
your
garden,
vegetable, yes, and we're gonna
my
come back to
organic.
that. Yeah, so
Okay,
okay, we're gonna come back. Let me change the screen so that we're chatting. That's not what I meant to do. There we go. All right.
there we
So
are.
talk about your process with the city of Atlanta, your NIMBY neighbor, not in my backyard. That's what NIMBY stands for. So what that looked like and how it kind of propelled you into doing some work with the city of Atlanta.
Okay, so initially I approached my next door neighbor and told her while the house was being built that I was building the home and that I would be placing it in my backyard. And she said, sure, fine. And then next thing I know, I'm getting a call from my neighborhood planning commission. And they're saying, oh, really? You think you're going to put a tiny house back there? Well, no, you're not. And sent me all this verbiage and all this legalese about why I couldn't put my tiny house in my backyard. So I went to a different neighborhood. I went searching for somewhere that I could place it because time was of the essence at that time. So one of my friends agreed to let me place it in their backyard in a different neighborhood. And then I started getting involved with Tiny House Atlanta. And I realized that there were antiquated laws on the books, zoning laws, that did not allow people to have ADUs, accessory dwelling units, in their homes, in their backyards. And the reason for that was because when during desegregation, a lot of liberal white homeowners allowed black families to move into their neighborhoods and rent out their guest homes or their garages. And some people didn't like that. So they created a law that said that only the homeowner could reside in an ADU. Therefore, that cut that out completely. So that was not legal and it was not allowed. So we began a movement and we decided that that was not going to work. And we were able to get that law dropped. It's no longer a law. And I mean, I just couldn't believe it. Being an immigrant in this country, I'm originally from Port au Prince, Haiti. It's when things like that occur, it just shocks me. And I'm learning a lot, but we got that done. We got that passed, and then I went to directly to the neighborhood planning unit, and I was able to get my permits. And Trees Atlanta came and approved me, and everybody approved me. But you know what, Jewel? I didn't tell my neighbor. I decided. I
She
decided
didn't
I'm going to
she didn't tell you
surprise her.
she was calling the people, so why should you give her the courtesy of telling her what you were doing?
I decided to anonymously move my tiny
Exactly.
house into my backyard.
Exactly.
So, my neighbors to my right, very cool. I told them of my plan. I had to drive the tiny house through their yards. They were very receptive, very open to that. The morning that we moved the tiny house, she called the city of Atlanta 4 times. She actually admitted that to me the other day, but she called the city 4 times. And every time the inspector would come, I would say, look, I've got my permit. And finally, because she called anonymously, but we know who was calling.
Right,
And
right.
finally, the last inspector said, would you please just post it? And I said, why? This is so much more fun. I don't think the city would love me for that. But,
No, I don't think
it
so
was,
either. But that's
but
exactly what they deserved and she deserved for just being
yeah,
underhanded. So what is your
yes.
relationship with her now? Has she come around to understand benefits of tiny houses? Like I people that we knew kind of in 20 as I like when I was building 2013, 20 well 2014 when I was researching 2015 building, there were so many people who felt like I was crazy and they just didn't get it. But now 2023, we're hoping that people are paying attention and understanding the benefits that tiny houses offer. So has she come around at all?
Jewel, me being me, when she broke her foot and needed somebody to go to the grocery store for her, I was there. When she needs her trash cans pulled in, she's an
Mm,
elderly woman. I
Mm,
preliminary. Um, I don't know. She's even asked to come look at it and asked if one of her family's members, excuse me, one of her family members could stay there at one point. I decided that I wasn't going to do that. Um, I
boundaries
just
are
don't want to
important.
bring her into my environment, but I'm willing to help and I'm willing to do whatever she needs me to do when she needs me to do it. And we've
Yeah.
left it at that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
boundaries are important. It's interesting. Like if she's not offered any apologies or anything like that, let's keep these healthy
Yeah.
boundaries and no. But I will. I'm like you. I will do what I feel comfortable, feel like I want to do, and outside of that, no. Interesting. So talk a bit about, so I always talk about how when people feel like people will ask me, are tiny houses friendly in Georgia or tiny houses friendly in North Carolina? I always share it is by city and county. And so the rules can vary by city and county. And you just reiterated that and proved that point because, a next city over may still say no to tiny houses while you were able to get that to happen. One of the things that I will plug for Nadia right now that she's not saying is that if you're in that air in the city of Atlanta, or even if you are trying to understand how to have these conversations with city officials, this is an opportunity for consultation with Nadia because that is a service that she can offer and give you some feedback of how she was successful and what her process was. So that is one plug, and all as always, her contact information will be in the video description. But talk a bit about, because I know it was also important for you, and I see the stuff that you do around your community, the history of Cabbage Town, and you touched on that a little bit of changing the laws. Um, how some talk about some of the work that you've done in your community, just in ensuring the that it's preserved, if that makes sense.
So currently, I'll tell you what's going on currently. So currently, if we can, we'll switch over to Airbnb and what's happening with short-term rentals in the city of Atlanta. So we have, as all cities, there are more predominantly white neighborhoods, more predominantly black neighborhoods, and then somewhere there's a mix. And the more predominantly white neighborhoods, more affluent neighborhoods, have their city representative decided that their community did not want tiny houses or short-term rentals
Okay.
approved for the city of Atlanta. And so about 2 years ago, we all got together and started talking about this, and they wanted to just stop. And I have to tell you, Atlanta has changed just tremendously in the last few years. I noticed it after the Olympics came here and people started realizing, wow, this is such an affordable city. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to do here. Now the movie industry has moved here. So affordable housing is a conversation we're having now. And not only that, my neighborhood, which was built around a cotton mill, Cabbage Town,
Right.
where cotton mill workers lived and worked, and has been very much gentrified. And the home that I live in and bought 20 years ago is not the same home that would be affordable to me now. And so short-term rentals have been a saving grace for many of us to
Mm-hmm.
keep our homes. I was telling my daughter the other day that when she was a baby, what I paid in rent for a year is what I paid for taxes last year. So my tax,
Wow.
so it's a totally different environment that we live in. And I'm okay with it, but the having that income has allowed me to maintain, to stay, and as we say, age in place.
Right.
And
Right.
our representatives talk a lot about affordable housing, aging in place, but in order for those things to happen, we have to have a, a, a resource access to resources that allow that to happen. So I have been working with my local representative. As a community, I'm a volunteer community leader with Airbnb. So I monitor our Facebook page. We have over 1,000 hosts on that Facebook page. We we get together, we meet with our representatives, we show up to, when they're voting, we show up when they're bringing these laws into place, when they're presenting them, and we let them hear us and let them see us, and make them accountable for saying one thing and doing another.
Right.
You
Right.
say, like I said, you say you want us to be able to keep our homes, but hey, what are we going to do about that?
Right.
So that's how I've
Right.
been really involved in the last few years with
Absolutely.
legislation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. And somebody said Tyler Perry Studios is in Atlanta. Absolutely. Um,
Oh yes.
yes, absolutely.
He
Um,
used to be 2 blocks from my home. Nobody knew that. I mean, they were
oh
2 blocks
really?
from the house, but now yeah, now but
Okay.
that was when he was just doing a couple of, movies here and there, and the he had one show. I forgot the name of the show that used to be filmed here, but now he's big time. Good for him though. Good for
Absolutely.
him.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're happy for him. Okay, so we're gonna segue a little bit, but this kind of feeds back into the conversation around intent and how you've spoken about how it's not just about what you eat, but what you're taking into your body. I mean, taking into your mind, all of those things. So I think one of the things that I don't remember hearing you mention in your introduction is give us some background about the 2 degrees that you hold. I don't think I heard you say that in your introduction. So I'm going to let you say it before I tell it.
So, in my younger days, I love numbers, so I went to school for accounting, and then I got a master's degree in finance, and then I got a job in that field, and wasn't for me. I looked around. I'm a people person. I love talking to people, being around people. And I was in this little office by myself, looking at a computer screen and moving numbers around. I said, "Nah, this is great." But after that, I decided to go into business for myself with real estate. So
Okay.
I got my real estate license soon after my daughter was born, actually, and started buying property in this area and owned a few duplexes. And then we all know what happened in 2008.
Right.
But it was that background that helped me survive, knowing how to take care of myself financially, how to not spend what I didn't have and
Okay.
save and live where I needed to be. And all those lessons I learned in school really helped me get through that and really helped me to be a work from home single mom for
Okay.
20 something years. So,
Okay.
and then when my daughter was in fifth, so I've always been passionate about nutrition. Got a little emotional. I've always been passionate about nutrition. When I was about 19 years old or 20, I moved to Atlanta, and my big brother, he was a vegetarian, and he took me to the local health food store and introduced me to being a vegetarian, and really got me passionate about that. And I watched him get healthier. My brother suffered from grand mal seizures, as so did I. And it was just a way of life for me. It became a way of life. And about 25, 26 years ago, my brother decided to change the way he ate and just got wasn't conscientious about it. And one day he went into a grand mal seizure and died. And
Mm.
I just started thinking about how much what we eat
Mm-hmm.
affects how we live and
Mhm.
how we don't live. You know, it really has an impact. And when my daughter was in fifth grade, I decided to go back to school. I think she was in fourth grade. I decided to go back to school. I registered, applied to Life University, and did my undergrad in dietetics because I was coming from a math background, so had to switch over to science. Got my master's degree in clinical nutrition. I opted not to get my RDA because RDA has strict policy, which is counterproductive to me. It's very
Tell
much
us what RDA is.
I will a
Oh,
registered
sorry.
dietitian. Or,
Okay.
that's okay.
Okay.
A registered dietitian because I have to follow FDA guidelines, and they're not based on health, they're based on nutrition. And whether
Okay.
that protein shake gives you 20 grams of sugar as well as 30 grams of protein, it doesn't matter to them. For me, it matters, you know.
Mhm.
So these,
Mhm.
and I'm exaggerating a bit, guys, don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, but it can have preservatives and it can have colors and things like that. So I decided to get my master's instead. Doing that it completely changed our lives. Um, I My daughter, who allows me to tell her story now, was diagnosed as ADD when she was officially diagnosed in third grade. Um, well, my daughter she was told in fifth grade that never make it through middle school by her fifth grade teacher.
Mm.
Um, my daughter came home crying in ninth grade and told me she couldn't do it anymore. School was too hard. I had to find another way. And I found a really small private school here in Atlanta that worked with children that had various needs, either kids who were actors for a living and only could go to school 3 hours a day, or
Okay.
kids, who had special. So 12 kids per classroom, and put her in the private school. Then we changed her diet completely, completely changed her diet. And like I said, my daughter is now graduating from college with honors. And she has, I mean, no one would ever, this child could not look you in the face when you had a conversation with her. That's how bad it was. Now, no indication, no indications. As far as I'm concerned, I have no activity of epilepsy in my body anymore. I was borderline diabetic, none of that. And it's like, I'm very passionate about nutrition. I don't think people understand how my journey brought me here. And sometimes I think if,
Oh,
you know,
I'm gonna share some of the slides as you're
okay,
talking up.
sure.
So sorry. Keep talking.
Jill, you got to my subject. And
I know. I know. That's I wanted to add some pictures to it so as you're talking, people
okay,
can understand how passionate you are about this.
yes, this is my vegetable garden, and this is my vegetable garden, all organic. I haven't planted for this season yet, but I'm going to this week. I had squash, I had arugula, spinach. Carrots didn't do so well for me. I had kale, Swiss chard, and what else? Collard. I said collard greens. Yeah. So a lot of greens, green beans, and this. I started this in 2020 when I couldn't go to the grocery store anymore. I said, "Wow, I have seeds here. Time to
Mm.
plant." And it's been great. I mean, my daughter Gabby said to me, "Mom, I didn't think I liked arugula, but now that you're growing it and it's all organic and fresh and really has a lot of flavor, I'm sure I don't like arugula." So
I I thought we had turned the corner, but that didn't go as I expected. That's hilarious.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is the difference in the
Yes.
flavor of
Yeah.
the food. It's just really, really pronounced. Well, I love arugula and I loved it more from my garden. So I'm a prep cooker, and these are the salads I prep for myself for the week. A mixture. I go to my local farmer's market. As a matter of fact, I was there this morning picking up my greens and my carrots and radishes and green onions, so that and beets for my salads. And I did a little prep cooking class during COVID. As you can see, we're masked, but I did a little prep cooking class at my house. We did a lot of cooking outdoors, some cooking indoors, just to show a few people how important it is to prep cook. And there's me on the grill. I just want you to know, pots and pans are very important too. Charcoal is a carcinogen,
Hmm.
cooking meat on open flames. So my grill is all cast iron top, so it doesn't um, touch flames or anything. But it's cast iron and very healthy. And here I am grilling fish and Brussels sprouts and onions. Yeah. So
I, I need to live closer.
yeah, you see, and this is my refrigerator on a good day. No, on a Sunday or Monday when my daughter's home. It's about half that full when she's not, but yeah.
Now,
And
and this is for you. This is
this
for you, or this is
yes,
for clients.
this is for me for 2 weeks. This will
Okay.
last 2 weeks. It's breakfast, it's lunch, and it's supper.
Okay.
And I just want to add that the forager, I was trying it out that day and decided it was had too much starch for me, so I don't I don't use that forager. I'm dairy free. I don't eat red meat. Gluten free, grain free. But eat a lot of vegetables. That's after a day at the market when I'm just prepping. I'm just cleaning the veggies and rinse them off, and the usual suspects. It's the best season right now for vegetables. It'll go from here, and then soon we'll have squashes. I try to eat, well, I do. I eat locally and what's in
Okay.
season.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna go back. We're gonna to stop here. Um.
Okay.
All right. Let me get back to changing my screen so we can be back in conversation. So one question, there are two questions I want to talk to in the chat. So the first question, and one of the other questions, we'll have to go back a little bit. So that the first question is, do you have a cookbook? And so that's a good question.
That's
And
a good
so
question. So, what I did when my daughter was little, I started writing all my recipes down in a book for her. And I have a little book that I have them written in that I said, "Oh, one day when she's on her own, I'm just going to hand this to her." And so that's the only cookbook I have, but I don't have an official cookbook.
well, it sounds like you need to publish that. That there's an opportunity, and thank you for pointing that out because this is the kind of stuff that I stay in her ear about. There's opportunity. Gabby, take note. Um, all right, I know this. So I do want to talk about. I know you had a post recently. I don't know. I remember exactly when it was, but you were talking about the change to medical field standards because now they've identified that body size doesn't necessarily represent good health. And so talk a bit about that because I remember you kind of went off on that subject, and as it even applies to you when people ask you about you being a nutritionist. So talk a bit about that.
So, a lot of times I notice when you think of a nutritionist and you look on social media or any media, you see a very thin white woman. And there are not a lot of There are not a lot of role models for us, looking at health and nutrition. It seems almost something distant. That's something we don't relate to, and that really bothers me. And I I had this thing. Well, anyway, but I finally, the medical industry, they're doing research on health beyond just how people look now. And
Hmm.
we've touted the skinny, skinny, skinny thing. And kids are getting anorexic and they're doing a lot. I used to be a professional model, and when I modeled, I was never a thin model. I was always a full figure model, they called
Hmm.
us, because I wore a size 10, 12.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was a full figure, and I worked along other models who were the traditional models, and we would get a spread. Like for lunch, when we were working, we'd have a spread, and I'd pick out the really healthy stuff. Our traditional models would eat a candy bar,
Mm,
and that's all they would eat. And they needed the sugar to go on, but they did not want to eat. They starved themselves. And it always, I being in that industry and seeing that, it always bothered me that we had this image that thin people were healthy. And
right,
therefore, somebody even brought out the other day that maybe they're not even looked at medically like people we expect to have diabetes, because they look at them and say, "Oh, you're fine." And
right,
another thing, I found out there's so many things that the doctors don't test for that really are important to our health and well-being. So that being said, I'm really glad that the medical industry is starting to change their tune about that and
hmm,
starting to look at health as health and not just how we look. And it's really that's really important, because I'm a brown
absolutely,
woman, My weight's in my hips. It's not, and what's detrimental is when you have a lot of fat around your heart, around your organs, and those kind of things. You cannot out exercise a bad diet either.
right,
I mean,
right,
a lot of us work out, muscular, look great, and we're very unhealthy on the inside. So it's really that image. We have to let go of that, and we have to embrace health as something that is, and not something that looks a certain way for everybody.
right. I think it's what is it? It's 80/20. Like diet is 80% of of your health, and working exercise is 20%. Is that not right?
I think it's probably said that way. I say 99%, but yeah, no, 80/20 sounds very reasonable. And
Okay.
I think, no, but exercise is very important, Jewel, as you're saying, it's very important. But I had a friend who owned a gym, worked out every day. I mean, really good looking guy, well built. He was running down a path, one of our running paths here in Atlanta, suffered a major heart attack, triple
Oh, wow.
bypass surgery. He had a horrible diet.
Oh,
But you
wow.
would look at him and you would
And not
never
know it.
imagine. And
Yeah.
that happens. That really happens. Look at our cancer patients. If you look at a traditional cancer patient, it's not an obese person. I mean, we have to stop that. We have to stop that
Of
and stop
image.
putting
We're a
that
society
pressure.
of
That
images.
image. Absolutely. And that's how we don't maintain economic wealth, or we establish, and that's how we don't maintain or establish health. And we've got to
Mm,
let go of that. We've got to look on the
absolutely.
inside.
Absolutely. So there's another question asking what you meant by prep cooking. And the question is, do you prep everything and set it up in containers to mix and cook later?
No, that photograph of my refrigerator is an example of the outcome. So what I do is I cook everything in one day. So it takes me about 4 to 5 hours. It's not that bad. I chop my vegetables, wash them. I may do that the night before, soak my beans. So I soak beans because that you need to soak your beans, guys, because they have lectins in them and they're not healthy. But soak your beans overnight. I do all that. I get sometimes overnight, and then the next day I cook everything and I portion it out. I know I need a cup of vegetables, and that way I individually package everything in glass containers, put that in the refrigerator, and then the next day, if I feel like having carrots and Brussels sprouts for lunch with my protein, which could be salmon or cod or some beans, I pull those out. I do not use the microwave. I put them in the toaster oven, put them in for 20 minutes at 300, and lunch is ready. Dinner is ready. So I never have to think about oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
hungry. What am I going to cook tonight? It really helps prevent that eating spontaneously and
Mm-hmm.
eating out when you are out. Man, I pack a thermos. If I know I'm going to be out all day, if we go up to the mountains for the day, I've got my thermos of lunch, my thermos of dinner, and if a few nuts and a fruit for snack. So that's what I mean by prep
Okay.
cooking.
Talk to us about the nutritional services that you offer. I know at one point I think you were doing meal prep for people. I don't know that you still are doing that, but go ahead and plug the work that you do here. This is
I do
again, guys.
consultation.
I have to keep calling her out on what it is that she does. So let's stop so she can tell us what she does here.
Thank you, Jewel. I do private consultations, um, Zoom, over the phone, whatever is convenient for folks. I do those. I also don't do meal prepping for people anymore, but I teach people how to meal prep. I'm
Okay.
even thinking about doing that as offering that as an experience on Airbnb. That because Airbnb offers
Oh, that would be
experiences as well.
fabulous. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
where people can tune in and, you know, register to do a meal prepping class with me, where we could talk about in advance what to buy at the grocery store or and we can cook together. Or you can just watch and take notes, whatever works best for you. But I teach people how to meal prep now.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So, you talked about this a bit, but I want to kind of go back and talk a little bit more, and I'm going to change the slide again. I want to talk about um the Airbnb piece and your homes on Airbnb. So you are an Airbnb advisory board member, you're an ambassador, and you're an Atlanta community leader. Um, because I know you, I know some of the work that you do in around Airbnb, and you kind of talked about it a little while ago, but around inclusion and diversity, and speak to us a little bit. So you were talking about the gentrification, and we know that Airbnb can have some impact there. So talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing from the lens of the Black and Brown communities and diversity and inclusion, if you can.
Okay. Um, it's really important for me to not just for Black and Brown residents to keep their homes, but to build generational wealth. And
Absolutely.
so, what I do, I am on the host advisory board at Airbnb. And, but more than that, I'm also a host and advocate for the Black and Brown community. Um, so, the advocating for legislation that is beneficial to us is important. As a host, I see the benefit of offering that. I am meeting with a company, and I don't want to say too much about it because it
Mm-hmm.
hasn't happened yet, but I am personally meeting with a company in about a week or so to talk to them about they do a lot of work in the community to help with housing for the underserved and the
Okay.
underhoused community. Um,
Okay.
I'm meeting with them. I have this idea of how we could work together, meeting myself and them, and myself as a host as and them, in helping people stay in their homes, eliminate so many foreclosures that are happening, and help build wealth, generational wealth. And I think
Absolutely.
that's important because these are, I see my neighbors who are selling their homes for pennies of what they're worth, being driven out of the
Kind of
neighborhood, and
forced
then they
out.
realize,
Absolutely.
where's that? And then they realize, where am I
They
going to
don't have
live now?
anywhere to go.
Right?
Absolutely.
Where do I go with
Absolutely.
this? It's not right. And
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm working, uh, and
We
Airbnb
look
is
forward
very
to that
supportive.
update.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And hopefully in a couple of months, in a few months, it'll be something I can talk about and share. But I'm really excited about it. And I'm doing it on my own, like I said, but I'm very excited about it.
Absolutely. So one of the questions that I'm going back, and you mentioned this, and you were just talking about it a little bit, but the question specifically was of when you were mentioning before how your tiny house was helping you age in place, and I'm not sure that this person was aware that your tiny house is on Airbnb. So talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, the income that it offers, and
Yes.
what tends to drive people out of the homes. First of all, taking out too many loans on their mortgages so that they no longer can afford the payments, because what happens is they're building equity and they pull that out. The second thing are higher taxes. Once your home value goes up, your taxes go up. And with
Mm-hmm.
all the development that's going on in Atlanta, all these developers get a lot of tax breaks. Somebody's got to pay for it. There's new infrastructure that has to be built, roads, plumbing. I mean, everything, we pay for that. And as our taxes go up, if we're working at the same job, making the same income, that's not
Right.
we're not getting that raised. So having an Airbnb in my backyard has allowed me to stay on top of all of that, all of those expenses that I didn't foresee when I bought my house at a quarter of what it's worth now, brand new,
Mm-hmm.
custom built for me, 20 years ago.
Right. 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 Okay, so I'm sharing. We're going to move the conversation a little bit because I have the benefit of being your friend. And so I know that you recently purchased and rehabbed this home in Brunswick, Georgia. And we're going to talk
Yes.
about two things around this. So Brunswick, Georgia, for everyone who may not remember, it is the city where Ahmaud Arbery was murdered. So we're going to talk a bit about some work that Nadia is doing in that area around there. But I know specifically that this purchase was an investment property with your business partner, Gabby.
Yes.
And and so it kind of I want to tie that back into the conversation that you have been having on sharing with us on the importance of wealth building and generational wealth and building family wealth and the importance of involving Gabby. Again, for anybody who is late to this conversation, Gabby is Naja's daughter. So the help us tie all of that together with the intent behind this for you.
Okay, so after protesting on the streets of Atlanta for a year, some friends of mine told me about a house that they had just bought in Brunswick, Georgia, and they invited me to come down with them to visit. So I went down there and I fell in love with Brunswick. Um, it's just a wonderful town. Don't go too fast, Joe.
Nope,
It's
nope. I
a
had to go back. I
wonderful
couldn't
town.
remember what was after that. Sorry.
It's And I want to be really clear, guys, that Ahmad was not murdered in Brunswick. Ahmad was from Brunswick. He was murdered in a little town right near Brunswick, which is right across the bridge towards Jekyll Island. I believe it's called Seaside. It's a
Okay.
very
Exclusive.
affluent
Yes,
little
yes,
area,
yes.
very affluent small area. I actually, before knowing this, was on my way to Jekyll and saw this little area and drove through it, and it felt so creepy to me. And I
Mm.
drove through really fast. There was a lot of construction going on. People look at you and stared at you as you were driving by and said, "You know what? This doesn't feel great. Let me get to Jekyll." And then I found out that's really where it happened. So Ahmad's family is from Brunswick, Georgia. Every month, there's a
Thanks for
local
clearing that
bike
up.
ride. Oh, yes. There's a local bike ride every month in to commemorate, and I joined the ride in Glynn County um, every month that I can. And some of my friends from Atlanta will come down. And once I got to know Brunswick, fell in love with it, I decided I wanted to buy an investment property there because I love going there. I wanted a place for myself when I do go there. So my friends who invited me there, that's me. They're investors and a real estate agent. And like I said, they had just bought a house. So my friend Ramiro took me around, found some houses. I made offers. You know how hard it was to buy in those days. Everybody was offering above asking. I lost a few homes, but I got this one. I went to the neighbors. I talked to them. I met them. I told them who I was and how I really wanted this house. And could you please talk to the owner and let her know that I'm real? I'm not an investor. I mean, I'm not that investor. I'm
Yeah,
looking for
right.
a home for myself and my daughter for when we want to come here. We have a home. It will be on Airbnb in the meanwhile when we're not there. But I fortunately got this house. We had to completely gut it and do the same care that I took in the tiny house
Hmm.
is in this home. Everything is healthy. The furniture, my couches don't have sprays on them for stain. Everything, the paint, everything we could do. Um, it's the same. The mattresses are the same quality mattresses. And so I'm really proud of it. And yes,
It
my new
should be.
business partner, Gabby and I are both own the house, and she is graduating next month. She's coming home to work for the summer before she starts her job in Colorado. And I plan to teach her the business while she's home, how to manage our Airbnbs, how to invest in property so that it's a seamless transition so that mom can just play and travel in about 10 years.
Right. That sounds like an excellent plan. Excellent plan. One of the things that, and you let me know if you're okay with talking about this. One of the things I know you and I have had conversation, and you shared that you are from Haiti. You and
Yes.
I have had conversations a few years ago about how different it was, um, understanding coming to the United States, how blackness is perceived and received versus being of Haitian descent, where race isn't the focus. You're Haitian. Um, we know race is, an American social construct, but talk about, because that kind of lit, as you like. I know our conversations. It was like you early on, you didn't understand what was happening, and then getting getting an understanding and learnings that had to take place, and then it kind of lit a fire under you, like the impact of the work that you're doing. If Share what you're comfortable with sharing with the audience, but I feel like that's really important as people see all of the work that you're doing, understanding this isn't something that you really understood, you had to learn about early on.
Absolutely. So, coming coming to this country, I came as a human, and
Yeah,
in Haiti, we don't talk about black and white, but there is colorism, right?
right, absolutely,
Um,
yes.
where there's colonialism, there's colorism, and I am biracial, so I never even knew that. You know what I mean? I just assumed people came in different colors. And so when my daughter was little, one of the books I read her all the time is how we're all the same. We just are different shades of brown. And one day in middle school, I think it was, she looked at me and she said, "Mom, I am an African American. My reality, what I experience is different from you. So you
Mm,
can't tell me that anymore." You know? And we were having a conversation about race, and I was trying to convince her that, that's not such a, though I've experienced racism, don't get me wrong. And I just came at it from my privileged, because I came from privilege, right? So I came about it with that attitude. It's like, you're not going to treat me that way. I never thought about it as not just because you're black, you're being treated that way. It's
mm,
it's 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 race here. It's not a disrespect. It's a racism. And so that was how I started thinking. And then my daughter goes off to college and becomes a sociology major, Joel. And sh-
I can see that.
she went off to school for 6, 7 months, and COVID hit, and she came home. She had every book from every writer that writes about racism on her phone. And every time we got in the car, it's like, okay, mom, you're going to read this book today. So I was being educated on racism and systemic racism, and how it isn't about the fact that I can live in this majority white neighborhood now. That's not what's important. It's the fact that there are all these systemic laws, like the one I talked about,
Yeah,
that I didn't
yeah,
even know was in the book. All these things that are in the system that keep us from getting to a certain point. We
absolutely.
really have to open our eyes and be aware of what's going on. And that is really important. And my daughter has educated me in a way that I never would have thought possible. And to the point where, with my neighbors, I live in a majority white community. I was protesting every day for a year. We were even in Newsweek magazine, Time
Yeah,
magazine,
I
out
remember.
there protesting against racist laws and racist attitudes. And it was just, you had a mod Aubrey, you had so many things happening during those years, and it just really opened my eyes, and it really made it my passion as well. So I share that passion with her, and she knows all the terms and all the lingo,
Yeah,
and I'm just trying to do the work
yeah, and you're
to make
doing
it a better place.
a beautiful job of it. I think we had this conversation maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think we had that conversation, and so it's always in the back of my mind as I'm watching the work that you're doing, knowing the learning that had to take place as you were
Yes.
here in the United States. So I'm glad that you were willing to share that, because it's something that I feel is important. That understanding is definitely important. Um, what other questions did I have? What have you learned about yourself? So, well, let me ask this first question, and then this will probably answer that question. So, I always share that my tiny house journey created a shift for me, in how I represent in the world, how I show up for my community. Kind of, I'm not at the point of eating, the journey as you are, but it
I know
absolutely
you.
has. Yes, we talked about that too, but it
Yes, we did.
absolutely has made me eat better and be more conscious of what I'm eating. It has made me more conscious of my footprint in the world. It has made me more conscious of how I show up in the world and what my responsibilities are. Um, it has changed me in ways that I didn't expect in the beginning, because I was just building a tiny house. And so the journey really has changed me, overall. In I talk about how I can travel now, and I can travel with a backpack, and the things. um I'm not a minimalist at at all, but I'm very conscious of what I have, and excess, and not needing things. And so there is a mindset change that has happened for me in this journey. Um there's so much of your conversation that I feel like is maybe already who you were. So, do you, with your tiny house journey, um, for your value system, is that just kind of was that part of your journey already, of the way that you see how you were going to be progressing in life, um, or did it have any sparks of how you have changed in this journey since that time? Do you understand my question? Like, was that just part of the journey, and you feel like you were already headed in that direction? This is who you are, or have you seen yourself change as you put all of these pieces together and they all are kind of intertwined?
So here's what I'm getting listening to you. Um, I think, Jewel, that I am who I am. You know, I think what this journey has done for me is made me realize, and with your input, Jewel, realize the impact that I have, the impact that we all have, how important that is, and how it's important for us to acknowledge it and own it and to honor it in
Yes,
ourselves. And, just with watching with the legislation and talking to people, and individually, we are powerful. When we get
hmm,
out there in the street and we talk to somebody, they're looking at you and they're absorbing you. And you get to decide how you present and who
hmm,
you present to be. And when you realize that power that you have, I think it makes a big difference in the steps that you take. And
absolutely,
living this life, and I tell you, just, you know, you cheer me on, and you really, I think about it all the time, Jewel. I want you to know that. And, between you and my daughter, I've got a right ear and a left ear.
absolutely, absolutely,
And it really, you know, I, I think if we teach our children and we just are aware of how we present in the world and how much power we have and influence we have, I think we would look at each other and look at ourselves differently and look in the mirror and want to wake up every morning and be proud of what we did that day.
absolutely. That's beautiful. Absolutely, that is beautiful. And it did absolutely. I'm glad I asked those questions in that order, because my question I was getting ready to ask is, what have you learned about yourself in this journey? And you just answered that beautifully. So, that was perfect. Thank you. What would be the title of your autobiography?
Ah, Jewel, I want to say one more thing about myself.
Okay.
I am always willing to learn from others. I tell my daughter this. I'm big on these things. I always tell my daughter this. It's sometimes you have to just sit in the silence and take in what is being offered to you. Because I feel like we are every day there, whatever you want to call them, blessings that are stowed upon us every day. You just look, and if that one person gives you a seed of advice, I think that so sometimes we are reluctant to listen. And one thing about me is that when people say something to me, I listen and I process it and I say, is this something? I mean, I was a single mom with unemployment, with a brand new baby, sitting in a 400 square foot apartment, trying to figure out what happens next when a friend came over, sat in my living room, and said, Naja, you need to start buying property. I'm like, what? How can I do that? And he's like, get your real estate license, start buying some property. Jewel, that changed my whole life. But
Hmm.
I feel like these things happen for us, and we just need to listen and be there and take opportunity because it happens for everybody. So going back,
No,
going
thank
back
you. Thank you
to
for that.
yeah. So I'm sorry, Jill. What
No,
where are
you're
we?
fine. So I always say these conversations on Sunday, I have considered moving the day, but these conversations on Sunday really end up being soul conversations, no matter the guest what the guest is talking about, who I'm talking to. There's always some soul nuggets. And so this is, and I have sat here and ugly cried on camera. So that is that is what we do here. So no, don't say I'm sorry. That's what this conversation is about, and I'm grateful to you. So no ma'am, no apologies needed.
Thank you. Thank you for this space.
Absolutely. So your autobiography, do you have a title of what your autobiography
Um,
autobiography would be?
I'm going to quote my daughter.
Okay.
She's living her best life.
I like that. I agree with that. That watching the stuff, the way you're moving, the things that you're doing, watching you smile in your pictures, I would definitely agree with that as the title of your autobiography, and I love it. Beautiful. That's beautiful. All right. What's one question that I didn't ask that you wish I had asked? Something that you wanna share that maybe I didn't ask about.
Um, you know that I think we covered everything because either you asked it or I threw it in there. So
Okay.
I feel like we've
Thank
covered.
you,
I
Judith.
mean, it's important for me to enjoy life and to do what I love. And every day I work hard every day, but I never work a day in my life. You know, I just really enjoy this life and the people that I'm blessed to have around me.
Absolutely. I love that. All right. Share with people. Again, we talked about your tiny house on Airbnb. We've talked about the Brunswick home is on Airbnb. We've talked about your nutrition. We've talked about your consulting that you offer for people who are interested in um, speaking to their local officials about allowing a tiny house in the area and tips and tricks for that. We've talked about your nutrition counseling and services that you offer around there. We've talked about the fact that you're going to be creating a cookbook. Um, um, share with people, and this information will be in how to get in touch with Nadia in the video description. But I always like to have my guests offer links to how to connect with her as an Airbnb host, links to stay in the tiny house, links to stay in the Brunswick home will be in the video description. But how do you want people to connect with you and what for, etc.? Share that with the
Oh, feel
audience.
free to email me. Did you post my email address?
I'll
It's
I
my
will post it in
personal
I will
email.
post it in the description. But
Absolutely,
email is
and
the way. Okay.
absolutely, and and if you are interested in becoming a host on Airbnb, Jewel will have my the links to my properties and the link to where you could contact me to help you onboard as a host on Airbnb. if you go through the links, there's no charge to you. So if you go through my Airbnb links, there's no charge for you for becoming to get my help in becoming a host. That's something that's offered through Airbnb, and
Okay.
they even will provide you with. If I can submit a request for you to have professional photography done of your place, but I highly encourage it. It's a great. It's a. I mean, it's changed my life.
Absolutely. We see that. If you get an opportunity, so the tiny house again is in Atlanta. Her city is Cabbagetown. It is a very, very cute area. Walking distance, cool restaurants. It's on the Beltline. Just a beautiful area to explore. Her backyard is amazing. I haven't been able to get her to come to me yet to work on my yard like she does hers. Um, and then Brunswick is near Jekyll Island, so it's near water. It's a very nice area as well to visit. So both of her homes are in beautiful locations, so and beautiful. So you'll want to visit them, and then connect with Nadia for all of the nutrition benefits and information. I have to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I certainly appreciate your time and expertise this morning in this conversation. I am happy that you now own all of your greatness and you're just out sharing it with everybody else so that it's just not me and Gabby that know your greatness, but everybody else
Thank you.
gets to see it and benefit from it as well. So don't hang up. You stay on. But I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. Let me change my screen and do my little closeout. Let's Here we go. There it is. Well, it's kind of there we go. One of these days, no, wrong screen. One of these days, y'all, I'm gonna get this right off the top. I am going to be so proficient at this one day, but just not today. Again, this has been. Thank you, Michelle. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for being here. This has been a conversation on intimate spaces. This has been our conversation with Nadia. I do alternate with these conversations on intimate spaces where I'm talking to someone in and around the tiny house movement. And then on the alternating Sunday, it is What's Your Question, where I am answering. I often have a subject that I'm talking about that I'm answering a frequently asked questions, and I also take and answer questions from people in the chat. So if you have questions about tiny houses, the journey, communities, et cetera, this is where you need to be to get those questions answered. And there are several segments already available so that you can kind of go back and catch up on the content and probably answer a lot of the questions that you have. Thank you all for being here. If this video was helpful, I always ask that you like it, you share it, you tell your friends about it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is available. And I again thank you all so much. Somebody looks like they just logged on and said, dang, they missed it. Yes, you missed it by an hour and 19 minutes, but you can watch the replay because it was great. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful Sunday, and we will talk again soon. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all for being here. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Have a great day, everybody.